and welcome back to another episode of Tom's Podcast. Whether you're tuning in from your morning commute, a quiet walk in the park, or winding down after a long day, I'm really glad you're here. This is your space, a space where we talk about real life, real struggles, and real growth. A space to breathe, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. Tom's Podcast comes out every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evening, and it's all about helping you build a richer life through practical life skills, personal finance insights, and honest stories about what it means to chase happiness and success on your own terms. If you haven't already, make sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and Threads. We've got new content, behind-the-scenes moments, and little daily reminders to keep you inspired between episodes. So, let's talk about something we all face: comparison. You know, that quiet voice that whispers, "Why am I not as successful as them?" Or, "What am I doing with my life when everyone else seems to have it all figured out?" Sound familiar? Maybe you've scrolled through social media and felt that sinking feeling, seeing someone else's promotion, vacation, engagement, or glowing highlight reel, and suddenly questioning everything about your own journey. Or maybe it's not online at all. Maybe it's family gatherings where you're subtly, or not so subtly, measured against your cousins. Maybe it's at work, or even just in your head. Let me ask you this. Have you ever caught yourself feeling small? Not because you weren't doing your best, but simply because someone else looked like they were doing better? Have you ever felt like no matter what you achieve, it's never quite enough because someone else is always ahead? I've been there, more than once, actually. I remember a time when I was just getting started with this podcast. I had this idea, this drive, but when I looked around at other creators, their numbers were bigger, their followers were more engaged, their setups looked professional. And I remember thinking, why even try? Who's going to listen to me when there are already so many great voices out there? That thought almost stopped me. Almost. But here's the thing. Comparison didn't just make me feel behind. It distracted me from my purpose. It pulled me away from the joy of creating and into a cycle of proving, performing, and pretending. That's what we're going to unpack today. Because comparison doesn't just steal joy. It often robs us of our direction, our self-worth, and our ability to appreciate our own path. In this episode, we're going to look at why we compare ourselves to others so often, how it affects our confidence and decisions, and most importantly, how to let go of that habit and start focusing on the only journey that truly matters: your own. Your own. Let me ask you this. Have you ever caught yourself feeling small? Not because you weren't doing your best, but simply because someone else looked like they were doing better? Have you ever felt like no matter what you achieve, it's never quite enough? Because someone else is always ahead? I've been there. More than once, actually. I remember a time when I was just getting started with this podcast. I had this idea, this drive, but when I looked around at other creators, their numbers were bigger, their followers were more engaged, their setups looked professional. And I remember thinking, why even try? Who's going to listen to me when there are already so many great voices out there? That thought almost stopped me. Almost. But here's the thing. Comparison didn't just make me feel behind. It distracted me from my purpose. It pulled me away from the joy of creating and into a cycle of proving, performing, and pretending. That's what we're going to unpack today. Because comparison doesn't just steal joy. It often robs us of our direction, our self-worth, and our ability to appreciate our own path. In this episode, we're going to look at why we compare ourselves to others so often, how it affects our confidence and decisions, and most importantly, how to let go of that habit and start focusing on the only journey that truly matters: your own. So as you listen, I invite you to ask yourself, where in my life am I comparing myself the most? And what could happen if I gave myself permission to grow at my own pace? This isn't about pretending you don't notice what others are doing. It's about choosing not to let that define your value. Ready to dive in? Let's talk about how to stop comparing and start living. Let's start by understanding what comparison really is. At its core, comparison is the act of measuring ourselves against someone or something else. Their success, their lifestyle, their achievements, their appearance, their timeline. It's something deeply human. From a young age, we learn by watching others. We observe, we mirror, we compare. And in some ways, this instinct to compare helps us grow. It teaches us social cues, helps us set goals, and gives us a reference point. But somewhere along the way, that helpful instinct can turn into a harmful habit. One that quietly whispers, "You're behind. You're not good enough. You're failing." And in today's world, comparison is everywhere. It's no longer just the neighbor next door or your classmate from school. It's every successful stranger on the internet. We scroll through polished snapshots of other people's lives, and without realizing it, we start to measure our worth by their highlight reels. We compare our behind the scenes to their best moments. Sometimes the comparison is with people we know, a friend who got promoted, a cousin who just bought a new house, someone who seems to have it all figured out. Other times, it's with an ideal, a societal image of what success should look like. You know the one. Owning a house by 30, getting married by 28, driving a nice car, having a respectable job. But here's the question: who decided that's what success looks like? And more importantly, why do we let that standard affect how we see ourselves? There are two kinds of pressure that comparison can create. The first we might call positive pressure. It's when comparison motivates us, when we see someone doing well, and instead of feeling defeated, we feel inspired. It sparks a fire in us to try harder, to learn, to grow. In this case, comparison can act as a mirror, showing us what's possible. But then there's the second kind, the negative pressure. And this one's sneaky. It starts as a little thought, maybe I'm not enough. Then it grows. It tells us our journey isn't valid unless it looks like someone else's. It makes us question our value. It steals our joy. It convinces us that we're behind, when really we're just on a different path. This kind of pressure doesn't lead to growth. It leads to doubt. It doesn't push us forward. It weighs us down. Think about this. Have you ever felt proud of something, a project, a goal, a small win, and then immediately felt that pride disappear because someone else had done something bigger or better? It's frustrating, isn't it? That feeling of never being enough, no matter how much you do. Let me give you a real example. Imagine a young person growing up in a family where the standard of success is very clear. Become a doctor or an engineer. Nothing else is good enough. Maybe this person has a passion for design, for music, for business. But every family gathering is filled with comparisons. Your cousin just got into medical school. Your brother is already working for a big tech firm. Over time, this person stops asking, "What do I love?" and starts asking, "What will make me look successful?" Or take another case. Someone scrolling through Instagram, seeing friends buying homes, traveling the world, getting married. That person might be working hard, building something slowly, figuring life out at their own pace, but suddenly it feels like they're failing. That's the danger of comparison. It puts a timeline on your life that was never meant to be there. It makes us forget that people walk different paths, at different speeds, with different resources. So why do we fall into this trap so easily? Well, part of it is biology. Our brains are wired for social comparison. In prehistoric times, it helped us survive. We learned by watching who thrived. In school, comparison helped us compete, improve, prepare for the world. But in today's hyper-connected, image-driven society, the volume is turned up. We're not just comparing within our village, we're comparing with millions of curated lives online, and our brains haven't fully adapted to that. The other part is cultural. Many societies reward visible success. The car, the job title, the relationship status, these become symbols of worth. And when our worth is tied to something external, comparison becomes constant. We start to believe that our value lies in how we look to others rather than how we feel within ourselves. So what's the cost? The cost is authenticity. When we compare too much, we start living someone else's life. We pursue goals we don't even care about. We chase timelines that don't fit us. We silence parts of ourselves to fit into an idea that was never ours to begin with. And most painfully, we lose sight of our own growth. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you looked back at your own progress and felt proud without comparing it to anyone else? When was the last time you said, "I'm doing okay," not because I'm ahead of someone else, but because I'm further than I was yesterday? You see, the real measure of success isn't where you are compared to others. It's where you are compared to where you started. That's the shift we're here to talk about. In the next part of this episode, we'll dive deeper into the two types of people I've seen in this journey: those who are often too easy on themselves and those who are unrelentingly hard. Each reacts to comparison in different ways, and both have lessons we can learn from. But before we move on, take a moment to ask yourself, in what areas of my life am I letting comparison steal my peace? And more importantly, what could change if I started focusing on my path, not theirs? Let's keep going. Let's talk about something that might sound simple on the surface, but reveals a lot when you dig deeper. The two types of people we often meet when it comes to how we deal with ourselves and our progress. I like to call them the easy blamers and the silent strugglers. Chances are you've met both. Maybe you are one of them. Or maybe, like many of us, you've been both at different times in your life. The first group is what I call the easy blamers. These are the people who, when things don't go right, quickly point to everything around them, except themselves. They're the ones who say, I would have made it to the interview on time, but traffic was horrible. Or, my boss never told me what to do, so I couldn't finish the project. Or, the system is broken. That's why I can't get ahead. Now let's be clear. Life is hard sometimes. Traffic does happen. Bosses can be unclear. Systems are unfair. This isn't about ignoring real struggles. But when every challenge becomes someone else's fault, we rob ourselves of the chance to grow. Because if the problem is always outside of you, then the solution is always out of your control. And that can be a really powerless place to live. I had a friend like this once. Let's call him Dave. Dave was smart, charismatic, full of potential, but every time something didn't go as planned, there was a story. The client was unreasonable. The manager didn't explain it well. I didn't have enough time. After a while, it became a pattern. He stayed stuck, not because he wasn't capable, but because he kept giving away his power by blaming the world. And what's worse, he started to believe his own excuses. Then there's the second group, the silent strugglers. These are the ones who set incredibly high expectations for themselves. They push, they hustle, they rarely complain. But inside, they carry a heavy weight, the kind that doesn't always show. These are the people who beat themselves up for not being perfect, who lie awake at night replaying every little mistake, who feel like they're never quite enough no matter how much they accomplish. Maybe you know someone like this, or maybe you recognize yourself. There's a woman I used to work with. We'll call her Emily. She was the definition of excellence. Always early, always prepared, always delivering. From the outside, she looked like she had it all together. But one day over lunch, she shared something I'll never forget. She said, every time I get something right, I just feel relief, not joy, just relief that I didn't mess it up. And when she didn't get something right, she'd spiral into self-doubt and harsh self-talk for days. That hit me hard, because sometimes the pressure we put on ourselves is even greater than anything the world puts on us. So here's the question. What's the impact of living in these two extremes? Let's start with the easy blamers. When you constantly blame others, you shield yourself from discomfort, but you also block your own progress. Growth comes from responsibility, and without that, it's hard to learn, hard to change, hard to evolve. You might feel more comfortable in the short term, but over time, it leads to frustration, stagnation, and a deep sense of being stuck. On the flip side, the silent strugglers often achieve a lot, but at a high emotional cost. The pursuit of perfection can become a prison. No matter how well they do, it never feels like enough. They burn out, they break down, or worse, they lose their sense of joy and self-worth. Both groups are reacting to comparison, just in different ways. The easy blamers look outside and think, I can't win because the world is against me. The silent strugglers look inside and think, I'm not winning because I'm not good enough. And neither belief is fully true, because the truth is, we all face setbacks. We all have things beyond our control, but we also all have the ability to take ownership, to learn, to adjust, to keep showing up. So what would it look like to live in the middle? To hold ourselves accountable, but with compassion. To be honest about our mistakes, but not define ourselves by them. To aim high, but allow room for rest and imperfection. Because here's the thing. Self-awareness isn't about being hard or soft on yourself. It's about being honest and kind. It's about saying, yes, that was my fault, and I can do better, instead of, I'm such a failure. or this wasn't entirely in my control, but I still have choices, instead of there's nothing I can do. Finding that middle ground, where we take responsibility without shame and strive without self-punishment, that's where growth really happens. So as we reflect on these two groups, the easy blamers and the silent strugglers, I want you to ask yourself, which one do you tend to lean toward? And what would it look like to shift closer to the middle? In the next part of this episode, we'll explore a mindset that might just help with that, something I call the quiet grind, or the philosophy of working with focus and intention without getting caught up in comparison. But for now, take a breath. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be honest and willing to try again tomorrow. Let me introduce you to a mindset I hold very close to my heart. I call it the quiet grind, or in simpler words, the philosophy of patient, focused work, free from the noise of outside comparison. In Vietnamese, there's a word I love, cam cui. It doesn't have a flashy translation in English, but it describes someone who is quietly, diligently working, not loudly, not for attention, just consistently with intention. That's what this next part is all about. The power of cam cui, of putting your head down, showing up, and doing the work that matters to you. Not for applause, not to beat someone else, but because it aligns with who you are and who you want to become. In a world where everyone seems to be shouting about their wins, there's something deeply powerful about staying focused on your lane. No shortcuts, no drama, just quiet progress. Here's what cam cui is not. It's not lazy, passive, or boring. It's not settling or lowering your standards. On the contrary, it's about playing the long game. It's choosing to build, even when no one's watching. It's choosing consistency over comparison, purpose over performance, progress over perfection. When I first started Tom's podcast, I'll be honest, I was tempted to look around. I saw other podcasts with better numbers, higher production value, big-name guests, viral clips, and for a moment, that old feeling crept in. Am I too small? Too late? Not polished enough? But then I asked myself, why did I start this in the first place? The answer was simple: to speak to you, to offer stories, questions, and ideas that could support someone else's journey, to have real conversations about growth, happiness, and what it means to live with intention. And none of that required me to be better than anyone. It just required me to show up over and over again and keep doing the work with love and care. So instead of tracking numbers or comparing my content to others, I made a choice. I focused on making this episode better than the last. I focused on improving my voice, my writing, my connection with the audience. Not all at once, but bit by bit, episode by episode. And you know what? Over time, that quiet effort added up. Not overnight, not with viral fame, but slowly, surely, with depth and authenticity. That's the beauty of the cam cui mindset. It allows you to build without burning out. It creates momentum, not stress, and it frees you from constantly measuring your life against someone else's scoreboard. Let me share another example, one from the business world. There's a local coffee shop I used to visit regularly. Nothing fancy, just a small space run by a quiet owner who always greeted customers with a smile. While big chains in the area were constantly changing their menus, investing in ads, trying to outdo one another, this little shop stayed the same. But every time I went in, the coffee tasted better. The service felt warmer. The playlist, the lighting, the tiny improvements in decor, all carefully thought out. They weren't trying to beat Starbucks. They were just focused on making their coffee better than it was yesterday. And slowly, word spread. People came not because it was trendy, but because it felt real. You could taste the care in every cup. That's cam cui in action. No billboards, no hype, just excellence built over time in silence. So let me ask you, what would happen if you applied this mindset to your own life? What if, instead of obsessing over where others are, you started asking, what's one thing I can do today to improve? Not a huge leap, just 1% better. What if you stopped comparing your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20 and simply focused on writing the next sentence in your story? Think about where you could be a year from now, not if you do something extraordinary once, but if you stay consistent day by day, if you improved your skill, your mindset, your health, your relationships, just a little every day. What would that version of you look like? Here's the beauty of this philosophy. It gives you permission to grow at your own pace. It removes the pressure to constantly perform. and it returns the focus back to where it belongs, on you. You become your own competition, your own standard, your own source of motivation. Now, let me be clear. This mindset doesn't mean you never look around or get inspired by others. Inspiration is beautiful. Community is powerful. But the moment inspiration turns into insecurity, it's time to come back home. Come back to you, your process, your path. The Kumkui mindset reminds us that we don't need to shout to be successful. We don't need validation from the world to keep going. We just need clarity and the courage to keep showing up. So, where in your life do you need to stop comparing and start building? Where do you need to put your head down and say, I'm not doing this for likes or praise or perfection. I'm doing it because it matters to me. And more importantly, can you trust that this quiet effort will pay off, even if the world doesn't clap right away? Because it will. The world rewards those who stay, who commit, who build slowly, with love and intention. So here's your question to carry with you today. If you focused on getting just 1% better every day, what could your life look like 1 year from now? Not in comparison to anyone, not in competition, but in quiet, focused progress, just for you. That's the heart of Kumkui. And maybe, just maybe, that's the key to both success and peace. So now we've explored why we compare, how it affects us, and the quiet strength of showing up for ourselves each day. But what actually happens when we stop comparing altogether? What are the real, tangible results of letting go of that habit? Let me tell you, the shift is deeper and more powerful than most people expect. Because when you stop comparing, you stop trying to live someone else's life. And that opens the door to something incredibly rare and valuable in today's world: peace. Peace with who you are, where you are, and how you're growing. First, let's talk about confidence. Not the loud kind, not the look at me kind. I'm talking about that quiet, grounded confidence that comes from knowing you're enough, just as you are. When you stop measuring yourself against someone else's timeline, you get to define success in your own terms. You stop asking, am I behind? And start asking, am I aligned? Confidence built this way is durable. It's not shaken by someone else's win. It doesn't shrink in the face of someone else's glow. Because it's not based on being better, it's based on being true. That shift alone can change your entire outlook. It allows you to show up fully in your work, your relationships, your creativity, without that background noise of comparison constantly pulling your attention away. It gives you the space to make decisions based on your values, not your insecurities. Second, you begin to rediscover joy. Not the kind that depends on achievements, but the kind that lives in the process. The joy of becoming, of trying, of doing something because it matters to you, not because it will get more likes or praise. I want to share a story here. A friend of mine, Daniel, is a long-distance runner. Not a professional, not training for medals, just a guy who loves to run. A few years ago, he started running as a way to relieve stress. At first, he tracked every step. He followed all the fastest runners on social media, compared his times to theirs, pushed himself to go faster. But over time, it started to wear him down. He stopped enjoying it. His runs became more about proving than feeling, and eventually he quit. But 6 months later, he laced up his shoes again. This time, no stopwatch, no apps, no stats, just him, his breath, and the sound of his feet hitting the pavement. He told me, I run now to feel alive, not to be the best. And you know what's funny? He actually got better. His endurance improved, his body got stronger, and most importantly, he fell in love with running again. That's what happens when we stop comparing, we stop performing, we start participating. We come back to the joy that lives in the present moment, not in the race. And here's the third gift: sustainable success. Success built on comparison is exhausting. It forces you to constantly adjust your direction based on what others are doing. It's like trying to sail while watching someone else's map. You might move, but you won't get where you're truly meant to go. But when you build your path from your own purpose, when you grow in your own rhythm, that's when success becomes sustainable. You're not chasing someone else's goal. You're creating something that's rooted in you. That kind of success lasts. It doesn't collapse when trends change. It doesn't require you to constantly hustle for validation. It's built on alignment, not achievement alone. So now I want to turn this back to you. Take a moment and think, What area of your life have you been comparing the most? Is it your career, your relationship, your body, your creativity? Now imagine, really imagine, what would shift if you stopped comparing in that area? What would you gain? What would you finally give yourself permission to enjoy or to start? Would you allow yourself to take a new path? To try something without fear of failing publicly? To move slower, more intentionally? To rest without guilt? Because here's the truth. Your journey doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be beautiful or valuable or successful. It only needs to be yours. When you let go of the need to measure your progress by someone else's yardstick, you free yourself to grow on your own terms. And that, right there, is the beginning of freedom. So here's your invitation. Think about one area of your life where comparison has been loud lately. And this week, just for 1 week, try to silence that noise. Instead of asking, am I ahead or behind? Ask, am I being true to myself today? Then take one small action, no matter how tiny, that brings you closer to the version of you you want to be. Not the one you think others expect, just the one who feels right to you. Because when you do that, when you stop comparing and start committing to your own path, that's when everything begins to change. You feel lighter, you grow deeper, and you finally give yourself the space to become exactly who you were meant to be. As we come to the end of today's episode, let's take a deep breath and gently return to the heart of everything we've talked about. Comparison. It's something we all do, sometimes without even noticing. It sneaks into our thoughts, our decisions, our sense of worth. But as we've explored today, comparison can quickly become a quiet thief. It steals our joy, our focus, and often our peace. But here's the good news. We can choose a different way. We can shift from measuring ourselves against others to measuring ourselves against who we were yesterday. We can trade comparison for compassion, for patience with our journey, and pride in our growth. And that's where the magic begins. Because the truth is simple but powerful. Comparison can be a source of negative pressure. But when we commit to quietly improving a little each day, when we embrace the kumkui mindset, we begin to uncover something even more valuable than success. We uncover joy. We build self-trust. We find a deeper sense of meaning in the work we do, the goals we chase, and the people we become along the way. So today, I want to leave you with a quote that captures it all. Confidence isn't thinking you're better than someone else. It's knowing you don't have to compare yourself to anyone at all. Let that sink in. Real confidence doesn't come from being the best in the room. It comes from being you, fully. No mask, no performance, no measuring tape. And if that feels hard, that's okay. Start small. This week, I invite you to try something. Just for 1 week, set down the habit of comparison. Don't worry about what others are doing, achieving, or becoming. Instead, wake up each day and ask yourself one question. How can I be a little better today than I was yesterday? That's it. You don't need a dramatic transformation. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to keep going. With heart, with intention, with a quiet kind of strength. And as you do, I'd love to hear how it goes. Share your experience with us. What you're learning, how you're feeling, what's changing for you on Instagram, X, or Threads. Just tag Tom's podcast and be part of this growing community of people choosing growth over comparison, peace over pressure. And of course, if today's episode spoke to you, it would mean the world if you shared it with a friend, someone who might be struggling with comparison, someone who needs a gentle reminder that they are already enough. Send it to them. Start a conversation. Because the more we talk about this, the more we heal together. Also, don't forget, Tom's podcast comes out every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evening. So wherever you're listening from, make sure to follow us so you never miss an episode. We're here with you 3 times a week, sharing stories, insights, and reminders that you're not alone in this journey. And lastly, thank you. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. Thank you for being part of this space. Your presence matters. Your growth matters. You matter. So, until next time, take care of yourself. Keep going. And remember, the only person you ever need to be better than is the version of you from yesterday. I'll see you soon. Soft, relaxing outro music fades in.